For a long while now, people have been wondering about plane crashes and damage in Flight Simulator 2020. In this video, I'm going to take a look at that, along with the more crazy effects of weather, such as rain and extreme winds. Let's jump in then and take a look. Okay then, here we are in Courchevel in France. A very nice airport, quite a famous one, basically because of the danger that the runway can possess or pose to people, but also because it's a stunning area. Now what we're going to look at here is the weather effects initially, and then we'll have a look at how things work with the crashing and overstressing the aircraft. We've got a load of presets here. We can drop down and just have a few clouds. We can have scattered clouds. And we can go on from there. Now people have noted that clouds do hit the performance a little bit, but I've not found it to be an issue for me, at least not significantly noticeable, certainly not with my graphics card anyway. Now let's drop in here and have a look at the clouds. You'll notice there's multiple layers. We can affect the altitude of each layer, and there's also a whole bunch of other settings for each layer, such as coverage, scatter, altitude, and all the rest of it. So basically you can set the clouds exactly how you want them to look, and of course these are all volumetric, so they look very nice, and you can even fly right into them as well. And one of the things you're going to want to see is rain. Rain works very nicely. You can see that here. We can affect aerosol density, which gives us a nice squall of rain. We can control the precipitation, even add in a bit of lightning, and a little bit further we got the option to change temperature, so we can increase the temperature or decrease it right down. If we drop it down too far, it will actually change from rain to snow. And all the effects that come with that. All of these will have effects on your craft and how it performs and how you actually get to fly it. So do be a little bit careful there, especially if you've got none of the assists on. If we choose the snow preset, we can see it layered on the ground. Let's jump back into the plane then. We've got some rather bad weather here. There's some quite high winds. I believe they're about 30 miles an hour or thereabouts. Lovely looking effect of the rain on the ground and on the windows. And as we pick up speed, you'll see it start drifting across the cockpit windows. Now, so that I can demonstrate the effect of weather and wind, I'm going to use a minimal input on the takeoff here. So I'll put a very little amount in the rudder just to counteract the wind a little bit, and I won't change the ailerons at all, even though we should when taking off in crosswinds. But I just want you to have a bit of a feel for what wind actually does. And again, this isn't as high as wind can go. It's wind maxes out at 150 miles per hour. It's around about 30 miles here. So still bad enough, and you really wouldn't want to fly in this anyway, certainly not in a plane like this. Now straight away you can see that the wind is pushing me off to the side of the runway, and this effect is going to become more pronounced as we start to rotate in just a moment. You can see how the plane actually starts tipping towards the side. So now we're going to head back to the runway again, this time in better weather, and we're going to get up into the air so I can show you the drone camera, and then we're going to change the weather out again. Now one thing you might notice here is that the rudder is pretty twitchy. This is something that many people have noticed in the alpha and both the beta as well, that the rudder, especially on the Cessna 172, but pretty much on most of the planes, can be very sensitive. And this is even when you do set the curves and set the dead zone. It's a little bit of a problem there, but something that can hopefully be fixed before too much longer. Now one very nice feature we've got with Flight Simulator 2020 is something called active pause. We can pause the plane. The world around us still continues on. If there's other planes flying around, they will continue on. Traffic on the ground will carry on. Weather and all the rest of it will also carry on. The only thing paused is the plane itself. This is very useful if you want to take screenshots and other such things. We're going to go into the showcase mode. This is basically a drone camera, and we can completely separate this from the plane itself and move it absolutely anywhere we want, including to absolutely any altitude. We can go up to tens of thousands of feet, and we can even travel tens and maybe even hundreds of miles away from the plane itself and just basically explore the world like this. So a very nice way of taking screenshots. We're going to park up over here with the drone camera, and now we're going to add in some clouds and switch out to a storm again. I think let's just have a look what they look like over the mountains here, the mountains of Courchevel. Oh, we've got zero visibility. Don't fly in this. There's a bit of advice for you. So I'm going to turn the wind down a little bit. I think we don't want that too high because it makes it very difficult to fly, but we want a little bit of wind just to give us that effect. of being in bad weather. I think that should do it. And now we'll switch back to the cockpit so you can have a light look at what it's like when flying through the rain. So the plane is still in active pause mode here. You can see the weather is going on around us, but the plane isn't moving. We'll now unpause the plane and have a little bit of a fly around. Now, weather has numerous effects on your flying. It will have the obvious effect here of low visibility. It will also cause things such as icing up if it gets too cold, and high winds can overstress your craft as well. Again, that's something we'll have a look at in just a moment. But before we get to that, we've seen a very dangerous, pretty much ugly looking weather, I guess we could call it. Let's have a look at pretty weather. Now, something I've always really liked doing when it comes to flying is flying either through or over clouds. And seeing as these are pretty much the best clouds ever put into a sim or indeed any other game, they're volumetric as well, and we've got a lot of control over it, we're going to customize a very nice area for us to fly over. So it's just a case of positioning the clouds exactly where we want them to, getting the right amount of coverage, and then for the magnum opus here, we're going to change the time of day to sunset. And there we have it. Flying through that really is the things that dreams are made of. Let's have a closer look at this then from inside the cockpit. Yep, beautiful stuff, isn't it? Very, very impressive. I've seen a few people say that they don't feel the clouds look realistic. They're a bit too much like a cotton candy, I guess, or candy floss as we call it over here in the UK. But for me, I think they look ideal. Very nice stuff. Anyway, you can fly into the clouds. We'll do that right now. And of course, when you do this, visibility reduces right down to 0. Fortunately, we've got the G1000 there to help us out a little bit. This then is a perfect opportunity to cause the first problems with our craft. We're going to overstress it by overspeeding. Going into a complete dive here, you can see our speed reaching untenable limits. The plane cannot handle this, and it's going to cause damage. And there we go. So we don't see wings flying off, we don't see the airplane getting damaged. What we do get is a message here saying that we've sustained critical damage. As far as I'm aware, this may well be how it's staying, but it could be that we start seeing the damage models in the sim later on, in a future update, or by the time it is released. Don't forget, this is a preview build, but this is the way it's been pretty much for the entire time I've been testing it out, so it may well stay this way. Now you can see here the problem is the landing gear is still down and I'm trying to land in water. This will also cause problems. There we go, we've pretty much ripped the landing gear off, or potentially even flipped the plane, so you don't want to do that. But let's try that again, at this time with the landing gear retracted. We're going to land in the sea, and there is a specific reason I'm doing this, aside from the sheer fun of landing in the sea or indeed a river, which is a very nice thing to do with the Icon A5. I've actually flown around all manner of cities, landing in the rivers. Right, so we're not going to stay here in the water, but I've come down low so that you can see what the sea actually looks like with regular calm weather. We're going to take off again. I'm going to get up into the air. We're going to use the active pause, and I'm going to change the wind out so you can see what sort of effect the weather has on the ocean here. Now, my plane is up in the distance there. You can see it as a very small dot. It's in active pause mode. Remember that even though the plane is paused, the weather around it will still affect it. So if the wind gets too high, it will cause damage. Turning the wind down to 0 gives you very calm oceans there. Turning up a little bit, you can see the waves start to increase, and the higher the speed of the wind, the more effect it has on the ocean here. We've got some quite large waves going on here. It does look quite nice as well. Let's get up to around about 50 miles an hour and see what sort of effect that has as well. We've got some very nice waves coming in here, some large ones. Like I said, max speed is 150 miles an hour, but I think before we get to that, we're going to cause problems to our plane. 105 miles an hour, and I think there we go, yes, it's caused damage to the aircraft. You've overstressed the aircraft and caused critical damage. In this case, the wind has caused some problems. And now for the final thing that many of you have probably been wondering about: what happens when you crash into the ground, or indeed when you crash into buildings? We're here in Paris then, a very, very nice looking city. You may notice there's perhaps a few too many trees scattered around. That does seem to be an issue that is being cleaned up, but it's there for now, but hopefully won't be by the time release comes. I'm not going to crash into the Eiffel Tower, don't worry. We're going to pick a random building here and just slap bang straight to the side of it, I think. Anyone will do. This one seems like a likely candidate. Hope there's not anyone in there. And again, we get the same message. You collided with an object and caused critical damage to the aircraft. Okay, so as you may have noticed, some damage to the plane happens for very obvious reasons, such as crashing into things. Other damage is for things that may not be quite so easy to control, such as getting into a spin or going into overspeed. Fortunately, on the assistance menu, we can control all of these. We can disable crash damage, we can disable aircraft stress damage, and we can even disable any engine damage if we so want. But I've got all of them enabled here, as with the icing effect as well. The icing effect can also be switched over to visual only, which will prevent it having a negative effect on your plane. So there we have it then, a look at some rather extreme weather as well as damage to your airplanes. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.